Remember Craig? Today it's time we take apart the 108 megapixel smartphone that only cost $300. You know, a little autopsy. We'll compare the sensor size of the Realme 8 Pro to the 108 megapixel sensor inside of the Note 20 Ultra. Both camera sensors are made by Samsung, and it'll be interesting to see them both side by side from the inside. This video is sponsored by Raycons. Raycons are wireless earbuds that cost half the price of other premium brands. With their super small footprint, compact design, and long battery life, I've used them for working out or running outside. It's easier to exercise when there's no wires to deal with. These Raycons have 6 hours of playtime on their own, and 24 hours of total playtime with that charging case. And the coolest thing is that Raycon is so confident in their earbuds, they'll let you try it risk-free for 45 days. To get your own pair, just click the link in the description or head to buyraycon.com/jerryrigeverything for 15% off your order. There are different colors to choose from, and huge thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. Now, we already know Craig survived the durability test, but it's time to see if he survives the teardown. Let's get started. Opening up the back of my teardown skin Samsung Note 20 Ultra is pretty easy, since I had never really added more adhesive to that back glass panel. You can see the 108 megapixel sensor just chilling there in the middle. The Realme 8 Pro is still glued shut, and it's a little more difficult, but I can persuade it to open up with a little heat and my razor blade. The suction cup does not stick to the rough etched surface, but that's okay, since removing the plastic back is much easier than removing a glass back. I don't have to worry about this one cracking or shattering. I did, however, forget that Craig is still turned on. I would make a terrible doctor. Once all the adhesive is sliced away from around the edges, the back panel peels off, leaving the stovetop camera lens behind. The camera lens comes off on its own as a separate piece. Then I can remove the 19 screws holding down the back plastics to the frame of the 8 Pro. Now this is where things get a little different. Instead of the back plastics being just the back plastics, this time around they also include the side plastics. I'll pull out the Ever Given size SIM card tray, and then work my way around the edge of the phone between the screen and the frame to pop off all the exterior plastics at the same time. Kinda cool. I'll unplug the battery, just like a little Lego. And then we can get a look at the bottom loudspeaker. No foam balls this time around, but there is a coin-style vibration motor attached to the plastics, as well as a waterproofing mesh over the speaker opening. The Realme 8 Pro doesn't have an official water resistance rating, but it does still have quite a bit of waterproofing inside of the phone, like this mesh and rubber gasket around the microphone hole in the bottom. I still wouldn't trust it to be watertight though, but it's good to see there are precautions in place. I'll peel up the little green flap on the battery and give it a little tug. And nice work, Realme. Removable batteries are the way to go. Even Craig approves. This is a 4,500 mAh capacity battery, and pretty big for a phone this inexpensive. I'll pop up the extension ribbons, and then make my way to the underscreen fingerprint scanner. This optical reader does have a lens on it, instead of just being a flat sensor. The lens type typically seems to work better for me and my fingers. Then we have the bottom board with the USB-C port, as well as our buddy the headphone jack. Jack and Craig are friends. With a few more connections and one more screw holding down the motherboard, we finally get a good look at those cameras. Normally, cameras that work together are also sitting together in some kind of metal housing to keep them all aligned and situated under that camera lens. But that's not the case this time around. Each camera is kind of free-floating and actually pretty small. For example, usually the fingerprint scanner is the smallest camera sensor in the phone by far, but this time around, the fingerprint scanner feels right at home, next to the two macro and depth cameras, each of which are 2 megapixels. The motherboard still has the 16 megapixel front-facing selfie camera attached to it with a ribbon cable, and it has some thermal paste on the back to help dissipate heat into that metal subframe. This large metal subframe is probably what helped the phone survive the bin test, with its boxy rails along the side to help add structure and rigidity to the phone. So Samsung does make the 108 megapixel sensors that reside in each of these phones, and we can see that the sensor itself is different between the two models, the Realme 8 Pro's footprint being much smaller, by a pretty considerable amount, Larger sensors don't always mean better sensors, of course, but having more surface real estate to absorb light is generally considered a good thing. The Realme 8 Pro's 108 megapixel sensor does not have optical image stabilization, which might also explain the slightly smaller footprint. I'll use my razor blade to separate the lens from the sensor so we can get a better look at the internals. This does kill the camera, but I think it's worth it. The internal sensor of the Realme 8 Pro measures about 8 mm across, which is interesting because both the S20 Ultra and the Mi Note 10 Pro's 108 megapixel cameras measured about 10 mm across. So it looks like Samsung has managed to make a slightly smaller sensor that's still capable of capturing 108 megapixels. It'll be interesting to see the different side-by-side camera comparisons between the cameras. Maybe it'll make an appearance in MKBHD's blind camera test at the end of the year. Overall though, I'm a pretty big fan of the price point. I can basically buy 3 Realme 8 Pros for the price of one Samsung Note 20 Ultra. Both phones are boasting 108 megapixel cameras, and only one of which has a headphone jack. And of course Craig, who is extremely happy to still be alive. Mostly alive. The camera doesn't work anymore, probably because I ripped it in half. The camera app just opens and freezes, but everything else seems to be working just fine, so no complaints here. Craig says to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Come hang out with us on Instagram and Twitter, and thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you around.